Wow, we're live again.
We
Hello.
are. Good afternoon or early evening to those on the East Coast.
So quick question before we get started. I realize you're in a different room than you were in last time. Last time it was a tannish room. This time it's gray. You have something that says ship in the back of you. Is this your new official office?
Yeah, actually it is. Well, I got kicked to, very blessed and fortunate to say, the pool house, right? I mean, can't complain about that. But on the other side of the house, I got kicked over to. So I'm going to convert this little area to my office. Really excited.
Nice. So what's the ship thing? Is that nautical in nature? You go Navy, beat Army?
That's exactly what it is. So I had the opportunity this past, was it last, was it last year? Time goes by so fast. Went to the Navy, Senior Chief Pitcher, like to say, Navy Army game. We had that swarm event out there at with Philly. So
In Philly.
Yeah, great event.
You know, that is one thing I've always wished I could go to is the Army-Navy game. Go Navy, beat Army. Required to say that still from our friend. So, but no. So let's make it official. We're gonna go start with the JAG stuff.
Yep.
So we're legal, right?
Let's do it.
There's the banner. It's over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. But before we get started, there's something that you should know throughout our show. And that is the views presented herein are those of individual speakers and our guests and do not necessarily represent the official position of the DoD, Department of the Navy, or any command within the unit of the world's greatest Navy. Boom.
Boom. JAG. We are JAG official. That is good. So I'm excited. I'm excited. We have a great guest today. But we have to do all the booms, the hooks, the lines, the sinkers, all the fishing analogies, all the great things that we have to do. So if you like something, please put in a comment. If you have questions, please put in a comment. We'd love to hear where you're watching us from. Japan, Seattle, San Francisco, South Florida, wherever it may be. Please, the great state of Maine, let us know where you're at. Throw a boom in there if you like something. You know, we only get gooder with your input. So let's make it happen, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And while you're here with us, we are live and streaming through Facebook as well as YouTube. So we'd love to hear from either the platform, the city, or the state that you represent. Thank you for tuning in with us today.
And as a thing at the end, as always, don't forget, this is the hook. We're going to announce our next special guest, big time, at the end of the show. So you got to stay tuned, got to watch the whole thing. And we have our 2 cents, my penny, your penny, our pennies together, 2 cents from the leadership within.
That's right. Let's do it.
So are you ready for our guest?
I am ready. I hope our viewers out there are ready. We have somebody very special today for y'all.
We do. And let me tell you, this is, we talked about it a little bit last week. Let's talk about it again. How do we get these people? We just ask. I mean, really, and it's been overwhelming with how many people just said, yes, I'd love to be involved in that. So I'm excited. You're excited. I know our guest is excited. We talked to him a little bit earlier, but our guest is Mr. Josh Broder, the CEO of Tilson. We discussed it a little bit last week. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go ahead and bring him in. And he's an old Army guy. So forgive him for his past sins. We welcome him with open arms to the leadership within. And yes, we'll go with there. So without any further ado, that is Mr. Josh Broder, Executive Officer of Tilson.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. And we appreciate your staff as well. Phenomenal people, and really helped us get this all together and send us some great content to DC1 to get us up and running. So thank you to them as well. So I drive up I-93 every day, and I see these Tilson trucks. And usually it's 17:30-ish when I'm leaving the city. I'm driving north. They're driving north. They're obeying the speed limit. They're driving well. There are no qualms or issues with the way that they operate their vehicles. But I pass them every day, and I happen to be connected with you on LinkedIn. And I saw something unique on LinkedIn that kind of drew me to the Tilson organization and you as a person, and that's that you celebrate your employees and you celebrate your organization and the positive impacts they're making. So could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, on our team, we do a lot of work with our hands out in the field, building America's information infrastructure. And fundamentally, who we are as a company is just a group of people, like any unit. And so, one thing that really was highlighted to me during the COVID epidemic is just how non-essential a CEO is when you think about who are the essential workers, right? Who are the people doing the work? And ultimately, the team members that we have are leaving everything out on the court to not just do their jobs, but to take care of each other. And sort of the way we tell our story is by telling our team story, because ultimately that's just who we are.
No, that's 100%. When you put them up there and you celebrate them and they get to see that, that gives them a sense of belonging, a sense of pride, a sense of a larger purpose. And those are kinds of things are inherent to military members. Not to say it doesn't happen in the civilian sector, but it's an important part that comes across. But when you talk about your mission, that's a lot of what you guys talk about is mission. What is the mission of Tilson? Not just with your employees, but the overall arching mission of Tilson.
Sure. So our tagline is on a mission, and you see it on our trucks when they drive by. And we're on a mission to build America's information infrastructure. People say, well, what the heck is information infrastructure? And we say, it's everything on the internet except for your smartphone. So we build the fiber optic lines that connect cities. We build the cell towers that connect phones, and the facilities that the servers and the router go inside. So we build the pipes. And that means that on our team, we have folks that climb radio towers, technicians that configure computers and radios, technicians that splice fibers, and people who plan at a really high level how the internet's going to be constructed and how it's going to work and how it's going to be faster. And so when we say building America's information infrastructure, we mean the physical infrastructure and the virtual infrastructure that help people project themselves, across time and space. And here during the pandemic, it's particularly important because it's the only thing kind of linking us together. And we feel really strongly that a more connected world is a better world. And so that's our external mission and why we get out of bed in the morning and we go to work to do what we do. And we do have an internal mission though, and that mission is around building a team of high achieving people who support each other and get there together. And so the environment is one where people push each other to be better. And we have a lot of military veterans in the company. And I think one of the reasons why we've been able to attract and retain a lot of veterans and reservists and guard members has been that sense of being responsible for the person to your left and to your right is welcome and familiar. And so people pushing you a little bit to be your best or just being there to support you when you're not at your best is something that's sometimes lacking in a world where, success is measured individually and not with the outputs of the team.
Nice. So I have two questions based off of that, and they're a little weird. Number one, have you ever climbed to the top of the tower? Because I've seen that. I saw it in the video. I've seen it in real life. They look itty bitty way up there. It's a long fall. That takes some guts to get up there. Have you been up there yourself?
Yeah, I have been at the top of a tower, and I had the advantage of in my younger years being an ice climber and a rock climber in the Northeast here, which is a great place to do that. So heights was never a problem. What I will say versus my job, mostly projecting through a computer, and our tower techs who are out there doing that every day. It's not just the heights, but the fact they're doing it in the elements. We've got employees in Alabama and we've got employees in northern New Hampshire, and working in those conditions while like dealing with sort of life safety, like if you screw up, you could fall to your death, but also you can't take your gloves off or your hands will freeze. And then also being able to configure a device or figure out which fibers plug into which port requires somebody who has a certain mental toughness in addition to an intelligence, capable of doing the work. And so I just have a huge sense of respect for our field technicians, because those guys are both at some level an IT guy and also have muddy boots.
100%. So you're looking for a huge set of I guess different abilities and capabilities to perform that function. It is amazing, and I look at the younger generation, and we talk about this often, DC1, where we'd be surprised. Some people talk about generational changes, and I don't see it as much sitting in my position, being in talent acquisition for the Navy, and seeing these 17, 18-year-old kids are very, very capable, extremely capable, and it's not always what the news says. So I always find that interesting, and that's one of those things, because I know that being in northern New Hampshire can be cold, and Alabama can be hot, and then you have you have rain and lightning and all these other things that you have to take into account. And then utilizing your brain to be technically savvy is pretty hard pressed.
Yeah, when I started in business, millennials had a bad rap. It was like millennials are lazy and millennials are selfish and self-centered and taking too many selfies, right? And now you hear the same rap about the next generation, right? But I always felt like millennials got a bad rap. I mean, when I was in the Army, sorry, Army, go Army. When I was in the Army, the guys that were on my team, the men and women, were, they were millennials. They were like 17, 18, 19, 20. And when I think about who those people were, they're people who could accomplish anything, right? They had characteristics of caring about the work that they did and wanted to have meaning and purpose. And I think sometimes when people, criticize, millennial generation, I think one of the things they're showing maybe is their sense of concern or fear around this idea that as a generation that has access to better information and actually knows what's going on, they want to have a sense of purpose in what they're doing. Like, the money isn't just enough. And so my feeling was like, great, bring those millennials on, because we have a good mission. It's important. It's bigger than us, and we care about each other. And I've seen what that generation can do, which was they could accomplish anything under just atrocious conditions.
Yeah. I'd like to actually add to that. So, Josh, I had seen a few videos on YouTube, because what we like to do is we always like to look into a little bit more about our guests, any type of videos or TED Talks. And I noticed, gosh, what was it, like maybe almost 10 or several years ago, that you actually did a TED Talk in regards to where things are now, how it was growing up, the going into the future. You referenced your son, looking at him and how maybe the future will be for him. And in addition to that, what's so inspiring about your company, and you talk about, it's about the people, it's about the, allowing and retaining our employees. I understand that you have interns, and I've seen a lot of your interns speak highly about, and they sound very grateful for the opportunity, because not only are they a part of something great, but they're also allowed to, and just kind of released to lead, to go out into the field and to go out on their own after they learn some of these things that your company has been able to take them under their wing and teach them. But do you have some sort of a university program, or is it the scholarship, or is that how you're getting some of the younger generation in, or those with those skills that you're looking for?
Yeah, Veronica, I'm glad you picked up on that, because we think that engaging with people while they're still getting their education or making a transition from some other phase in their life is a great time to be working with someone. And we have a number of workforce development programs along the lines of what you discussed. I think the thing I'm most proud about is our internship program. And so our internship program kind of comes in two flavors. One, it's with folks who are in school or some kind of educational program, and they either have just graduated or haven't graduated and are doing this for credit. And they come to our company both during the summer and during the full academic year, usually part-time during the academic year and full-time during the summer. And you're right, we throw them right into it. That they may be called interns, but if you were in those organizations, you wouldn't be able to distinguish them from others, except that we've paired them with a mentor. And so for each internship position we have, we have a mentor who's committed to not just getting great labor from that individual and getting their creativity for our company, but also making sure that they get something out of this and are able to come away with some important life lessons and to learn how to work. And so we've had this tremendous internship program that has led to people participating in a serial of summers. So we'll have some people come back, and we wound up hiring the super majority of those interns who eventually become full-time employees, although not exclusively. Sometimes we're able to help them find the fit or the next step that they want, or they want to go to grad school, and we're happy to facilitate whatever we can there. We also have partnered with the Department of Defense in the DoD SkillBridge internship program, and this is a unique program that the federal government offers for active duty service members who are going to get out on a date certain, and up to several months before they actually ETS, they have the opportunity to put on civilian clothes and go to work at a civilian company. And so they're still technically an employee of that branch of service, but they're able to make a transition more slowly. So instead of being out and you've transitioned on day one, now they have an opportunity to try something out, get to know if they really like that particular organization, but also learn about some of the differences and nuances of working in the civilian world after being in the military. And so as an employer, I love it. A, we're trying to find veterans, but B, what a great opportunity to help somebody make a transition when the stakes are really low, right? The costs are covered by the Department of Defense. And for that individual, they can make a transition at a reasonable pace. They can try some things out. And at the end of that, they may say, hey, look, I got lucky and I found my forever home here. Or they may say, I learned a lot about what I like and what I don't like, and actually I want to go do this other thing. And so we think this has just been a tremendously successful program for us. And so those are the two parts of our internship programs. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to think about, in our long-term workforce development, how do we upskill our team members as technology continues to accelerate, and how do we not view sort of the learner, worker, intern person, like in the same way we have citizen soldiers, we have worker learners who are interns. How do we bring that ethic upstream into some of our more senior employees? So we're starting to partner with educational institutions that offer certificate programs and advanced degrees for people who are farther along in their careers but want to upskill so that they have future opportunity. And the first one of those partnerships is with the Root Institute at Northeastern, which is focused on artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we're having some of our employees go engage in those certificate and graduate programs for things like project management and analytics and computer science, so that they can think about what might come next in their career, but still stay closely tied to us and have an opportunity to progress.
What a win for more than one person. Wow, that's amazing.
It's been good.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So, we had some questions that came up, but you answered. One of them was, do you have anything designed specifically for military? And your organization, we were talking earlier, is roughly, give or take, let's say 40% military, prior military, and a lot of that is through the SkillBridge, correct?
Yeah, so we've had a number of SkillBridge interns that's been very successful. I would actually say the majority of our military team members have come in through our normal hiring process. We find that a culture that welcomes veterans causes veterans to talk to other veterans, so the word gets out. We've also worked hard to partner with vocational reskilling programs, and two that comes to mind are Warriors for Wireless and Airstream Renewables. Warriors for Wireless is a nonprofit that provides 2 weeks of reskilling for veterans that are making a transition, so it gets them ready to be hired for a job at a company like mine. And then Airstream Renewables is I think it's a 6 or 8 week educational program with several offices on domestic military bases, and they train people to be ready to either work in the renewable energy space, particularly doing work up on wind turbines or on radio towers, right? Very similar vertical access kind of environments. And I think you can use the GI Bill for that program, and the super majority of their students are military veterans, and so we recruit right out of that cohort. But I think generally that the cultural sensitivity to understanding what a veteran's experience is and how that might map to your civilian job requires there to be veterans in management. And so when I talk to other businesses, I peer group with other CEOs, and they say, boy, we think hiring veterans is great. We would love to have, more veterans in our business. How did you do it? Like, what can we do? Like, what's the thing we can do that'll bring a lot of veterans here? And I said, well, who's a veteran in your leadership team? And they're like, geez, I don't know. So, for us, we have veterans that are senior in our company, and sort of that sensitivity then pervades the team. And the person who runs our workforce development organization, and for us, workforce is recruiting, retention, onboarding, professional development, and our safety staff. We call that workforce at Tilson. The person who runs that is a woman by the name of Adria Horn, and Adria is actually still an officer in the Army Reserve. She's a lieutenant colonel there, and she had served, gosh, I'm not sure exactly how many years, but a number of years as an active duty Army officer, first as a military police woman, and then later in PSYOPs, serving with the Special Forces. And so she's got this incredible military background, something like five combat tours, and has stayed connected to the Guard. And so when we found her, and it was a serendipitous meeting, she was running the Maine Bureau of Veterans Affairs, which is the state agency in Maine who helps with, among other things, sort of workforce pathways for returning veterans. And so she had already had this sort of life passion around helping veterans make this transition. And so she's really helped us think about, what are the right leave policies, and, how can we support our military members who are still in the Guard and Reserve? Right? You have a lot of veterans, you have a lot of Guard and Reserve. And so she's helped us understand not just how to be compliant with employer support of the Guard and Reserve, with the statute, but also to have more sort of progressive policies. For example, we provide paid military leave when our military members, are out on drill. And the idea is that, there's a substantial pay differential, obviously, between that civilian job and what they might have been making on drill. We want to make sure that, their take home is the same when they stand up and they serve. And so it's been wonderful to have her on the team to help us sort of think about structurally, how can we sort of codify this? We're getting to be a, medium-sized, larger to medium-sized company. And we want to make sure the things that, I did and she did inherently as just veterans who knew people actually get like woven into the culture, so they don't necessarily like start not to feel as good and be less resonant as we get a little farther away from like day-to-day hiring, for example.
All right. Outstanding. So let's move into the big questions. If you're ready, these are the brow beaters. You're going to be okay though. The first one's tough. How did the Army help hone your leadership skills and style and things along those lines?
Sure. So, the thing I really wanted to be leaving high school and going into college, I wanted to be a leader. It was something that was really important to me. And I chose in the military for, among other reasons, because I felt like it would be a fast track to learn leadership and, have real deeper life experiences. And so I was a guy who started college in February, which means I graduated in February, 4 years later. And the February I graduated in was just a few months after September 11th, 2001. And so when I signed up for ROTC in college and took a scholarship and committed, to 8 years of service, and for that in active duty, the world was a really different place. It was a peacetime military, and stuff happened from time to time, but it was a very, very different place in that pre-September 11th environment. And I remember being at school with a good buddy of mine, watching on TV as the planes hit the Trade Center. And I think anybody who was old enough to be watching that on TV, remembers just where they were when that happened. It was kind of a life-defining event. And this guy that I'm sitting with, super smart, history major kind of guy, and he turns to me, as the talking heads are coming up on the news commenting on it. He said, "Are we going to invade Afghanistan?" And I said, "Afghanistan? Like, I don't think we'll have a land war in Asia. I think we've learned that lesson before." And so, flash forward a couple of years later, I'm in Afghanistan, and I'm a 20-something, young 20-something-year-old guy, and I'm in charge of a lot of people, and we're doing hard stuff. We're building networks and overcoming bad weather and bad geography and bad guys, and that experience of not just getting formal leadership training, through the ROTC process and then later through military schools, but like actually doing it, like having the no-fail mission of like, here's a bunch of people, get this mission done. And in my view, that leadership is a really sacred trust to be responsible for somebody. And so the training is really important, but the doing, there's no replacing the doing. And so for me, being in the Army was an opportunity to really get to understand just how sacred that trust was for other people, and to gain an appreciation about what people were capable of. And I think if you're going to be successful in leadership, fundamentally, you have to believe in your people. And that confidence in their abilities is one of the success factors as they look to leadership to say, hey, can we do this? Like, seems like a crazy thing to do. Like, if you believe in them, they believe in themselves. And so it helped me learn that belief. I was also, a white kid from a family that had money in Maine, and I didn't know anything about people or people's life experiences or people's stories. And so coming in the military, I encountered all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And that was a tremendous education, not just about how capable people were, but how their life stories and their different life stories and their different backgrounds were the strength. When you were faced with a problem, you had a bunch of different kinds of people, there was always going to be the answer in that group. And so I also learned sort of the power of what, the wide palette of who Americans are could really do, and just how valuable that was.
So how would you say that those lessons learned help you in your current role and what you're doing as the CEO?
Yeah. So, when I think about business, when I got to Tilson, when I made that transition from, military leadership to civilian leadership, I didn't know anything about business. I had no formal education. I didn't even know the difference between accounts payable and accounts receivable. But what I did have in my pocket is I knew about leadership, and I had appreciation of what people could do as a team. And what I would say in business, boy, a big chunk of business is just basic blocking and tackling of leadership and management, of getting stuff done and organizing people to point in the same direction and to do it as a team. And so honestly, the hard part, I think, where a lot of people they come out of business school and they know technically exactly what to do, but they don't have this life experience of leadership. I think it's a much bigger gap to go from, sort of business oriented, but no leadership, to leadership oriented and no business. So I had quite a learning curve to figure out what I didn't know in business. But the military leadership I find is exactly the same as the business leadership. Like ultimately, uniform or no uniform, people are people, and the kinds of things that motivate us and the kind of things that scare us and worry us and get in our way are all the same. And so I found that education in the military about leadership and about sort of the nature of people is just like something I draw on every day. And what I find is that when I run into good civilian leaders that didn't come from a military background, that the things that makes them good would have made them wonderful in the military. Like ultimately, those characteristics are the same.
So we actually have a listener, Admiral Nowakowski, who is big time. He's watching, and he's in the civilian sector. He's a reserve admiral. And I can't remember the company because I'm Qualcomm out in San Diego. So he agrees with everything you say, especially with how I like the block and tackling analogy, but I would have to say that your best analogy was the Princess Bride, or the part that you brought in about the land war in Asia, and the Princess Bride was a great bring in.
It's inconceivable.
Exactly. So, if our listeners haven't watched The Princess Bride, that should be on your to-do list this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but no, so outstanding, and I think that you said the leadership is the blocking and the tackling of and getting everybody to point in one direction. I haven't heard that necessarily put in that way, but that's a great way to put it. And your job is to manage the process and to lead the people and making sure that everybody's kind of in the way that the mission needs to be accomplished.
I think that's right. I think recognizing Sorry, mute problem there. I think recognizing that as a leader, you actually can't do any of the work. Like you can't do a meaningful amount of the work. And if you're going to accomplish something big, you need a lot of people. And what those people need is they need to know where they're going. And so the process of constantly communicating and providing steadfast focus on a goal, the idea that you can help people orient. I once heard a guy who's a really, really strong communications coach describe it as like you're a lighthouse and you're shining, you're shining your light on something. And like, look, people know what to do. They can figure it out. They're smart. But you have to keep shining it over there. It's not just like, hey, go over there. It's like there has to be a constant and steadfast messaging about the direction that you're going, and a recognition that you don't control people. Like ultimately, even in the military context where you have like formal control over people, like ultimately you actually really don't control people and their behavior. And so all you can do is offer them a vision of what needs to be done. And my personal experience has been when you put that on offer and you're consistent and you explain why, people rise to the occasion 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think that's very poignant and spot on. We see that in the military too a lot. When you have the nano manager that wants to do the work, that's the zone below the micromanager that wants to do all that work, has to be involved in everything. You see a lessening of what actually gets accomplished, and the more success is the one that's able to empower and to give the vision of what needs to be done and keep that constant message going. And so that kind of bleeds into the next one as we're talking about that, is the differences between leadership in an organization between military and civilian, and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I'm still going through that journey right now. For the first time ever, in the last maybe 2 years at Tilson, I'm leading a bigger group than I led in the military. That's a major difference. Is pick a rank in the military, your relative peer in the civilian world is managing many fewer people, and so I find that now I'm in an experience where I'm getting to learn more about executive leadership, and this is the leadership where I actually don't know everybody, which drives me crazy. That has been a really hard transition for me to go from a guy who cares deeply about his people and knows them to be a guy who shows up at an office and half the time I'm meeting new people I've never met before, and I'm like, how long have you been in the company? And they're like, oh, 2 years. So that's a hard transition, but I don't think that's different than in the military. In the military, that level of abstraction, where you have to be more of a cultural leader and more of a strategic leader, like that letting go, I think would have happened had I had to stay in the military and lead bigger units. But when I think about one of the main differences is in the military, when you went to war with a team or did whatever you had to do, you went with the team that you had, and ultimately you had to get to the other side with that team. And one of the things that's incredibly different and very disorienting often to military members as they enter the civilian world is that is not the case in a private company or even in a government job that's not the military. People get hired and people get fired all the time, and people hop for other jobs. And I think increasingly in younger generations, one thing I feel like I can say without overly stereotyping is, the idea of staying someplace for 4 years and getting a gold watch is not most people's career paths today. And so this idea that you may only be together for a short time is a very different ethic than somebody else who's got, like in the military, when you go do something, you're gonna figure it out. It's a bittersweet difference for me. It's sweet that ultimately you can choose your team, right? So I get up in the morning and I say, who are the people I want to surround myself with that care as much as I do, that are going to infuse their energy into this, that have different skill sets. Like that choice is invigorating and leads to a great organization. On the other hand, it can be really problematic because in the military, we've all been in a unit where there was a goat and we were dragging somebody along, right? But ultimately, at some level, we still took care of that person. Like we were responsible for their health and safety. We made sure that in the morning they stood in line with us in formation, that they didn't get lost. Like that person we brought along. And in a lot of companies, that person usually gets fired. And so what's bittersweet for me about this transition is the joy of being able to choose a team of really high functioning people is wonderful. Like, what a great environment to be in. But what I also hope to hold on to a little bit is that sense of responsibility for the whole team, that everybody is not their best self in every moment. And I look around in the civilian sector, and a lot of times people get fired every time they're not their best selves. And stuff happens to people in their life, and they're not always on their game, and their head is not always in the game. And so, I'd like to think at Tilson that we're doing some good work in trying to think about that person as a person and not just as an employee, and have some sensitivity to the fact that if they're not on their game at work, maybe something is going on. Maybe we can help. And so that ability to just choose who's on your team so quickly is both a blessing and a curse, in that it makes us less tied together. We feel less responsible for each other in this hire fire environment. But on the flip side, we get to seek out the people that we think are birds of a feather and try and make a team of like-minded individuals. So I think that's a really big difference, and I see veterans struggling with that every day.
I have heard that from many people that I talk to in the civilian sector is, and you brought one point is people are constantly looking for that next job, and maybe not everybody, but and there's a lot of hopping, especially when you get into the military industrial complex of L3 Harris to Raytheon to Boeing to whatever the next organization is, and they're just looking for that next bump and pay. And I would ask you this: is it a loyalty issue, or is it a pay issue, or is it just I'm here for a short time, I need to make sure I get what's mine?
Yeah, Mike, it's all of the above, to be honest, and depends on if you're talking from the employer or the employee's perspective. I will say, as a company, corporately, Tilson, we differentiate ourselves from our competitors in that we try not to churn our teams between projects. So we compete with all the big guys. Some of those companies you just mentioned, General Dynamics, MasTec, Dycom, and those companies, they scale up, they do a project, and then the project ends, and then everybody melts away, and they go to another project. And so you look at someone in that industry, the resume, they've got a 1-year job, 1-year job, 1-year job, 1-year job. Doesn't mean they were a bad person and couldn't hold down a job, but it means that they didn't have a sense of organizational affiliation for any long period of time. And so what we try and do is, as our we're a project company too, and as our projects come and go, we really try and find another home for that person where we can. We're not 100% successful, but we offer a lot of opportunities to make transitions between big projects or big client things that come and go. And what that means is you wind up with a nice, well-rounded team. So somebody that learns skills over here, they may not be doing exactly the same thing in the next job, but they may be some overlap, and it may make for much less of a learning curve. And so we try and have stability and retain our team over time to the greatest extent that we can. It's challenging, but we sort of see that as our differentiating feature on some of those other companies who I sort of think of like their workforce is rented, not bought, right? It's not their forever team, it's their project team. And our view is we're really trying to build our forever team.
That's good to hear. And that does set you apart from a lot of different organizations, and talking with people from around. DC1, I see that you came off. So you want to...
No, I was just going to mention that's exactly what, when I saw the video of your interns being interviewed, that's what they mentioned, that it feels like a team here. It feels like a family, that wholesome of togetherness. And then a little bit of me was laughing when you had mentioned that it kind of drives you crazy that you don't know all of the employees at Tilson, because I read an article that you're the type of leader or CEO that enjoys walking around the office and being in the lunchroom for coffee breaks and talking to people and asking the employees or the people there, in the company, how are you doing? How's everything going? So I can completely see how that could drive you insane.
Yeah, I mean, before COVID happened, I probably flew 4 or 5 days a week, bouncing between offices and customers. And so I get to see people all the time, but it just got big enough that even doing that, it got a little bit away from me. But I'm so glad we were able to do that internship program this year. The interns just started calling us once the quarantine started, say, hey, is our internship program going to be on? And so, I don't know. I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should. But ultimately, we actually wound up doing it in a remote setting, and it worked really well because of those one-to-one mentors. And the thing I was worried about is I wasn't going to run into those interns in the same way that I did, because I'd fly out to Salt Lake City and go to the office, and the intern would be there and I'd get to know what they were up to. But the thing I look forward to most in the year, my very favorite meeting of the entire year, is when the interns provide their end of summer presentations. And so they talk about what they did, what they learned, what their projects were. And you see these incredible individuals who tell you a little bit about themselves, who also get the sense of like this bright, shiny person, right? And then you hear about the project that they did that like actually accomplished something in the world. They actually built America's information infrastructure while they were here. And like, to me, that's the most fun that I have. It probably takes about 2 hours to get through everybody. They do these short presentations, and just seeing and learning a little bit about them is just such like an emotional shot in the arm for me that carries me through any difficult problems through several months after that. It's a renew your faith in humanity kind of moment.
So we have a saying in the Navy called a deck plate leader. So one of the guys I work with, Senior Chief Jay Realabit, put on there, a great leader is a deck plate leader. What that means in the Navy is you're walking the deck plates of the ship, and you're going out there to see your sailors in their spaces. And we see it with Undercover Boss. It's kind of funny because I watch Undercover Boss and I'm just thinking, okay, like, how did you not know that the guy or the girl 1 floor below you in an organization was having all these, like, they're 20 feet away.
Yeah. And they didn't, and the employee doesn't know them well enough to recognize them, right? So
with the horrible makeup. So that's a 2-part problem. They don't recognize the boss, and the boss doesn't know something's going on 20 feet away. I've always found that very interesting. So deck plate leadership. Did you guys have a specific name for that in the Army, or just
no? I don't think so.
People?
They sometimes say a soldier. But the implication was you knew the people and you knew the work, and that you were out there doing it. And for me, that's what a lot of my travel was about. And the thing that's driving me most crazy about the quarantine, of course, is my policy to put a halt to non-essential travel. And so, I'm trying to set a good example with that, but it is driving me crazy.
So DC1, I'm going to pass it over to you before we go to the book, because this is a long question, and make sure you read it for our listeners, not our watchers.
That's right, I will. So Lieutenant Sams, thank you for joining us. She asked, and she understands that we're talking about how big your company is growing. With the level of growth your company has experienced, do you envision to be able to maintain the same level of belonging in your organization?
So Lieutenant Sams has a great question, and that is something that I think about and worry about literally every single day. A culture in a company is not what you say, it's what you do. And so you can very quickly lose your culture if you start behaving differently. And what I mean by that is, we talk about, we're a values-based organization. You can go on our website and see what our values are, but one of them is respect. And so we essentially have a zero tolerance policy for people not treating their team members with respect. And so we talk a lot about that. And there's like a tile on our wall that says that. But that's not our culture. Our culture is when someone uses one of our team members roughly in a way that's over the line, and we fire that person, that's a cultural moment. And it's even more cultural if we don't say, like, no comment, I don't know why that person's not here, but we say, we saw some behavior that we thought was disrespectful, and that doesn't happen here, and we made a change. Like, that's a cultural moment. And so I think in terms of this sense of belonging to an organization is about constant vigilance to making sure that we are living up to the hype, that we're walking the walk on what we say about ourselves. And where I think organizations lose their way is not so much when somebody's out in California and the next person's out in New Hampshire. I think the bigger challenge is when organizations start to lose their way in not actually doing the things they say about themselves. And so this is something that, like, writing down your values and measuring the stuff you do against those values is really helpful for. And I think as we get bigger, we have more links in the chain of command. It's important that we imbue each of those subordinate leaders with a sense of ownership over those values and some freedom to make decisions to make sure that they're walking the walk against those values. So that it's a complicated answer because it's not a yes or no deal for us. It's like an ongoing journey, and we never get to arrive, because the minute we stop doing it is the minute the wheels can start coming off the bus.
Great question, great answer.
culture never stops.
Yeah, and I would say I saw in the
it
rest of Lieutenant Sam's question, like, what's the level of growth relative to that? We grow about 40 to 60% a year every year. So we're hiring, a few dozen people a month. And so we're at an extreme level of growth. Like the potential for that dilution is very powerful. And so, we also have tools around, deeper onboarding, where we talk and communicate these things. But ultimately, it comes back to leadership, like everything, right? Even in a really large organization, when a leader acts and communicates what they did, that has ripples that go across the organization. And I don't care like how geographically spread out it is or how difficult the comms are. Everybody always knows, like when a leader acts, everybody knows about it.
100%. Now, do you have a specific leadership development team, or is that just, like you said, imbued into each leader that you hire in the organization?
This is an issue I wrestled with as we grew the company. I had seen in a lot of big companies that a lot of stuff got outsourced internally to HR. Like HR hired and fired people. HR was responsible for professional development. And the thing I never wanted to be was an organization where line leaders were not responsible for the health and welfare and professional development and mission accomplishment of their people. And like fundamentally we're the hirers and the firers. That being said, at a certain size and sophistication, you need some of the things that the HR department brings around benefit management, around providing like clarity on job descriptions and fairness and compensation, all of that stuff. So we do have a sophisticated workforce team, and that workforce team is helping building active curriculum around project management and analytics and leadership. But ultimately that where the rubber meets the road is that one-to-one moment of coaching and mentorship that happens. And so we've been very focused on imbuing that into our operating units. And we say, in fact, we're on a new safety kick right now. We've always had safety as our number one value because we do some life safety stuff. And we've like compressed our safety performance. So like the numbers are super, super good, but now they're so good, we like can't improve them. Like we're just pushing against the stops there. And so I was saying, well, how can we change our behavior to have continuous improvement? And the thing that one of our senior leaders, our chief operating officer, Kelly Brewer, came up with the other day, she said, safety is an operational responsibility and we have to name it. Safety is an operational responsibility. And it's that same ethic of like leadership development is an operational responsibility. And when we say operational responsibility, that's code for a leader responsibility, like right down in the business.
Yep. I like that you're making it part of the entire organization. Lieutenant Sams likes as well and says the importance of an organization's culture is invaluable, coupled with the accountability at all levels. So spot on. So we like to read books. And we believe that one of the key tenets of growth and development is not letting your brain rot and always learning and always making improvements. So what we do ask is for our guests to give us a book that they have read or that they're reading that they would think could impart some valuable leadership knowledge. So
sure. So I'm constantly reading, and I'll tell you the thing I'm reading today. I turned through a lot of books. I just started One Bullet Away by Nathaniel Fick. He was a Marine, so not Army, trying to get some other perspectives. And I happen to know Nate because he lives in my hometown here in Portland, Maine, and I've run into him in the business community. And he's another guy who was a military officer, spent time, on combat deployments, and had transitioned to civilian life and been very successful in business. In fact, he grew a really successful cyber defense company. And this book is a first-person narrative, which in my generation, I'm 42. So in my generation, I'm he was the first of the sort of Iraq, Afghanistan vets coming back to write a first-person narrative. And I think the HBO special Generation Kill was, largely based on his unit's experiences in Iraq. And so I'm just getting into this book, and it's talking about how his Marine training impacted him, sort of like how he was transformed from a civilian into a Marine officer. And that's been just a great read so far. So I'm excited to finish it.
All right, outstanding. Here we put it up there. One Bullet Away by Nathaniel Fick. And you had another one, The Rise of Citizen Capitalism.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to learn about business while I continue to focus on my development as a leader. And so this is written by another guy who I happen to know is part of the same business community that I'm in. And yeah, it's called Accountable, The Rise of Citizen Capitalism, and it's written by Michael O'Leary and Warren Vladmanis. And in this, they're basically saying, like, look, it's all well and good to have a company that's financially successful, but actually a lot of companies' financial success and long-term stability and value has been undermined by only looking at short-term share price. And in fact, having organizations that have value and mission and think about the different stakeholders in their universe, their suppliers, their employees, their shareholders, leads to a better outcome and is more sustainable. And so, as we look at the world around us today, which is literally on fire, you think about what could we do differently when it comes time to recover, and how do we think about how we run our companies. And so I'm as helpless as everybody else is in the middle of the pandemic, but in this moment, one of the things I do have is stewardship of a company, and I want it to not only be profitable and successful and grow, but I also want it to benefit those that come into contact with it.
I love that thought process, and if you go through any college course on ethics, you can list the companies that have made very poor ethical decisions, chasing the bottom line. I have a good friend who was a salesman for Fortune 500 companies, and some of the companies he would walk in the lobby is the stock price. And that is, as you can tell, when you enter an organization, that's the first thing you see. That organization is be driven by the dollar and by the stakeholders in the stock, not necessarily those other aspects. So that might be a good book for me to read, because I despise people who make all decisions based on the dollar. It is.
And even ultimately, like, employees don't get out of bed for the share price. They don't get out of bed in the morning for the share price. People need a much bigger sense of purpose than that. And ultimately, companies that aren't attentive to the work that they do in the world in a sustainable way don't get to stay companies for very long. They might have a great share price for a short period of time if they're measuring it quarter to quarter, but year over year and decade over decade and century over century, like, the thing they do has to be sensitive to the moment they're in.
And I think we've been talking about the ethics of companies for probably forever. However, I know it's been a lot in the news, a lot lately, as the world is becoming more connected, and this news is traveling quicker and faster throughout the world. Is this happened? This is what this organization did. This is the decision they made, and there's no way to defend it. And when people can see it, and everything's out there in the open. So with that being said, you're on. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we're in a place where information has hopefully made us a little bit more transparent. We think about that when we build the internet, and ultimately there is a faster flash to bang between somebody happening and consumers responding. And so I'd like to think that'll be a positive feedback mechanism for the way people behave.
We hope so, and I think it will be as organizations develop and learn, and they start to grow into that aspect. So the other thing that we love here on the Leadership Within is quotes, and you have a very interesting quote. So I will let you speak to what your leadership quote is, and kind of the idea and thought behind it.
Sure. So I would just say that leadership is an act of love, and when we're in the military and even in business, both of those are somewhat macho cultures, and people don't talk a lot about love and feelings. But ultimately, leadership is an act of love, and what I mean by that is when you think about the sacred trust for other people's health and safety and well-being and professional development and psychological safety, you have to love those people, and you like ultimately investing in people and actually caring about the outcome in them is not something that can be faked. If it's not a deeply held feeling, everybody knows. And so ultimately, the leaders that I see that have the most resonance with their team members are the ones that are able to take care of those team members. And by take care, I don't just mean physically, but be able to communicate a genuine care. And I can't think of a better word than love for it.
I agree. We use that in now Navy Talent Acquisition Group New England. We use that all the time. It was one of the things that we came in with is leading with love, appreciating people, respecting people, and encouraging people is one of the most important things that you can do every single day in an organization to continue that culture and create a culture of success and belonging. So
yeah. So maybe to bring it full circle, when we started, we talked about how the thing I learned in the military was that people could accomplish anything, and a diverse group of people with different life stories always had the answer somewhere in the group. And I think it's impossible not to love those people when you recognize just what their capacity is to do.
DC1, how you feeling over there? Do we have anything?
Yes, great. So as I pull up the thread, I just wanted to give a few shout outs. San Diego, Virginia Beach. Chief Bayless just retired last Friday. He's tuning in, one of our, I would say fans, but one of our viewers who's always here with us and supports us.
He's
Thank
a
you
fan.
for tuning in. Jacksonville, Florida. Millington, Jacksonville again, Florida, Virginia, Salt Fork. So Skillbridge, he says Skillbridge is an amazing program. Not sure if he went through that, but a lot of great comments. A lot of fans here saying, love this forum, love our guests. So that's what we have so far. So viewers, really quick, make sure that you like, share, subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And thank you for tuning in.
Now the subscribe thing, is that little bell or is that the alert thing? Because I always get that confused.
Yep. So when you go to YouTube, you can hit subscribe. So that way you get everything that comes up that's new or anything that we add. And when you get the alert button, you're going to get an alert on your phone because a lot of us travel with our mobile phone and listen to audio or when we're driving. So you're going to get that alert that's going to pop up and it's going to say, hey, don't forget to tune in to the Leadership Within. They're getting ready to go live right now or they're live right now. So that's the alert button.
And our phones are connected by Tilson technology in this case. So actually, we had a question last week before I give you the last word, sir, is do you do the fake ones that look like trees?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
we do. We do. And ones that look like cactuses. So we get the pine trees. We can hide them in a cactus. We can put them in a palm tree.
Ooh,
however you want it to look.
Palm tree.
Aesthetically pleasing 5G towers. That's
exactly
nice.
Right. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see that most of these towers are now on utility poles. So as the data is getting faster, it needs to be closer to where people are. And so we're putting them on phone poles and light poles and kind of getting them down onto the streets.
I remember in the 80s, you drive around and you said, Billy Bob loves Jolene or something, or whatever the Joe Diffie song was. And John Deere Green up on the water tower. Now water towers are encompassed with 5G.
With antennas, that's right.
Yep.
Yes.
Anywhere we can get them.
So, all right. So we do have a Nadia Mary Finner. A leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon the others follow, not realizing that all along they're being directed from behind. It's from Nelson Mandela. And I read this every day as I grow as leader to remind myself it's not about me, it's about the team and the growth we can do together. So
that's a great
outstanding. And then Tiki Rogers says people don't know how much you care until they know how much you care, which is they have to know that you care, and just trying to guess is pretty leaving it out there in the open is never going to work. You got to show that you care every single day. So, Mr. Josh Broder, CEO of Tilson, we are going to give you the final word. Anything that you would like to put out to our audience in regards to leadership, any thoughts or anything that you want to put out to anybody?
Sure. So, we're all in a difficult moment in our country. And I think it's really important to recognize that we all have a role to play, right? So some of us are in charge of lots of people. Some of us are individual contributors. But ultimately, all of us make a choice to get up in the morning and come to work. And what I found time and time again, that leadership is not about the position you're in. It's about the way you behave. And we find some of the most effective leaders are informal leaders, who don't have formal responsibility over other people. And so that sort of like pivotal moment in my own leadership development was when I recognized that leadership is not about you. And Nadia's quote really resonated with me there, because that recognition that leadership is not about you, it is incredibly important. It's about making your team and the people around you successful. And when I became a parent, boy, does that hit home that it's not really about you. And of course, when I was a young military leader, I didn't have the perspective of being a parent. But with each step I take in my life, I recognize just how important that understanding is. That if you want to do good in the world, if you want to make waves, you actually have to recognize that it's not about you. And I'd encourage anybody who isn't a parent to talk to a parent about that feeling. But that's a foundation of really accomplishing something with the team.
Very good. Look, I appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your day, taking time away from your family, the office and the work that you have to do, and joining us for just a little bit on the leadership within and our viewers. We do greatly appreciate it, more than you probably know. We are really appreciative of everybody that comes on because you're giving of yourself to us and our listeners. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. DC1, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We do appreciate you. And viewers, just see, Josh, can we get those two whenever you get a chance, or your team can shoot us over or I can go back and watch it either way. But the Warrior Technology, the two programs that you had mentioned? I'd like to look that.
Oh, yeah. Warriors for Wireless.
Warriors for Wireless.
And I think that's the number 4, Warriors for Wireless. And Airstreams, plural with an S, Renewables.
Okay.
All right. So we'll put that out.
Find them online easily, and they do great work with veterans that are transitioning and want to reskill.
Okay, we'll definitely have that up there for our viewers. Thank you for being with us and everything that you and your team has done and continues to do. We look forward to continuous growth in your company and your future. Thank you. And we're really proud of you, and thank you for sharing your story and your knowledge with us.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mike and Veronica, and for the great work you guys do to tell the story of leadership from the heart.
Thank you so much, Josh. Appreciate you. Have a blessed day in the great state of Maine. Beautiful country up there. So if you've never been to Maine, folks, get to Maine. Absolutely gorgeous. All right. Wow. That was a great interview. That was phenomenal. That was like...
And it goes with, like, we had a CMP last Friday on, we were talking about leadership and trusting sailors to get the job done and not micromanage. And we hit a little bit on that this episode as well, which is pretty interesting, knowing your people and just trusting them and not always, the micromanaging. So I thought it was interesting that came up again. But here's one that I absolutely love. Believing in them, because when you believe in them, like Josh mentioned, when you believe in them, they'll believe in themselves. That's pretty powerful.
And it's when we discuss leadership in the military, a lot of what he talks about is what we discuss. So you can see that it works in all the successful people we've had on, whether it's Josh or Admiral Kowski, the MCPON, Chief of Naval Personnel, Rob Santiago, Master Chief Sharara, the NCR. All these people have all had the same thing, that you have to trust and believe in your people. So it's not make-believe, folks. If you're not leading in that way, then you're probably not leading. You're managing, and you manage systems, but you lead people. You can manage your process, but you lead people. And the way to get people to belong, and he talked a lot about culture, is by trusting them, believing in them, and doing the things that we talk about, the appreciation, the respect, the encouragement, doing all those little things. And that deck plate leadership, or he said soldier to soldier leadership, stuff's important. Like, you can't just sit behind a desk. I guess if you had like a huge organization, one of these large, the CEO is not going to necessarily be able to get out. But when your different department leaders, if you will, they have to get out. You have to make it important that leadership gets out to your field, to the individuals in your organization, to make sure that they know they're appreciated. So
Yeah, what's funny is that we talk about in leadership how a lot of leaders will say, or supervisors or bosses, whatever the position is, will say, "I have an open door policy." What's funny was what I read about an article about Josh and his company is that he doesn't even have a door. I really have an open door policy. I don't have a door.
Literally, don't even have one. No, that's outstanding. So we let's wrap all this up. Let's give our 2 cents. I think you went first last week.
I did.
All right, I'll go first this week.
Okay, let's hear it.
There's a lot of tough decisions that leaders have to make, and there's a lot of risk that leaders assume.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot take that risk knowing that there could be negative outcomes and then push it off on somebody else. Whether you're leading one person or a billion people, that's not acceptable as a leader. You cannot assume risk and then blame the people did. I had this analogy. Nobody told me it worked. Everybody looked at me like I was dumb, which I may be. But if a head coach of a football team tells the quarterback that no matter what, he's going to throw this pass and this particular against this defense, and then it's picked off, and everybody knew that there was a 50-50 shot of it being picked off. You can't be upset with the quarterback afterwards that he listened to you, did what that risk was, and then it got intercepted. You can't place the blame on them for the risk that you took. And so that's my thing. If you're willing to take the risk, you take the blame as well. And most leaders always do take the blame with everything that they have. But that's a lesson. That's my 1 cent of the 2 cents. If you take the risks, you got to take the blame.
I like that. Okay. Wow. That's unfortunate to hear. I mean, not that I guess I'm thinking like, man, that happened.
I'm not saying it happened. I just, as I get ready for these pennies of thought, that is something I was thinking about is leaders have to, and basically the larger thing is if you take the risk of being the leader, then you also have to take the blames that go with that, right? And you cannot point at everybody else and blame them. That's not leadership. So I'm not speaking of one specific incident. I'm just saying in general, you are assuming those risks. You have to live with those risks. And we all, as leaders, have to take risks.
Absolutely. Okay, gotcha. All right, so I'm going to add my other cent for our 2 cents, and it's something personal that I just recently experienced myself, and that was I was a part of a sailor of the quarter board where you're asked questions, and one of the questions that I was asked was, "Hey, how can you, how have you demonstrated leadership?" And all these thoughts came into my mind, and I'm already nervous, and I'm nervous because I want to do well, and I was trying to think of one thing, and I just felt like overall, long story short, I got off and I ended the board with, I wish I would have said this. I sounded like that. So I'm throughout the next couple of days, even at night as I'm going to bed, I'm just sitting there tossing and turning, wrestling with my mind saying, why did you say that? Why didn't you say this? This is what I meant. So overall, when I have to say, like, what am I talking about? My 1 cent would be, please, as I'm learning from my mistakes or things that I do, part of being, part of life and growing that mindset, don't beat yourself over it. It's okay. It's going to be okay. It's okay. Just learn from your mistakes or learn from the situation, whatever it is, and just grow. It's going to be okay. Can't do anything about it now.
It's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
That's it.
It's over. Well, that's a great 2 cents. If you take risks, assume responsibility, and take the responsibility, take the accountability. And yours is don't beat yourself up for things that have already passed.
Yes.
I would say if you had planned it properly, then you may not have had to beat yourself up.
You never really know what they're going to ask on a board.
You don't. It's a hodgepodge of craziness in there. I've been there. I've been on both sides of that table. So sometimes I just make stuff up, and there's no way you can answer. I'm kidding. All right. So big news. You ready?
Yeah.
Next week's guest, Admiral Garvin,
Hey.
NetC, going to be on here. September 25th, 1500, same bat time, same bat channel, Leadership Within. And DC1, I do want to tell you this.
Yes.
When he was talking about there's certain people that you have to drag along and you have to make sure that they're taken care of, I'm that certain people to you. You drag me along. You make this show work. I thank you again. I'm very appreciative of everything that you do. You keep us together. I'm the one that's getting pulled along and made sure I'm in formation on time, all those things. You take care of me in this show, and I could not appreciate you.
And I appreciate you too, because we all balance and we work together.
There we go. I got to give you a sense of accomplishment every day by bringing the old Master Chief along. It's good. So, all right, everybody, we are out. We appreciate you so much. Please, next Friday, Admiral Garvin, Netsy, 1500, Leadership Within, YouTube's, Facebook's, booms. Let's make it happen. Everything gets gooder. Nothing short of phenomenal. And we are out.